Introducing the brand new MSI Raider GE78 HX, an absolute powerhouse of a gaming laptop. It features an RTX 4080 with a 13th generation CPU. It also has a completely redesigned chassis to support 250 watts split between that CPU and GPU. But the real question to ask is whether this is going to be able to compete with a gaming desktop, or if it's just another laptop with fancy LED. Let's dive in and find out. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Epic PC channel, and today we have the pleasure of sitting down with the GE78 HX from MSI. Notably, this is the first laptop we've had in the studio to feature a 40 series GPU, so it's going to be great to see how that performs. It also features a completely new design chassis from MSI to support a higher TDP, so that's going to be great to compare to some of the older versions of laptops that we tested with low TDPs. Now onto the full list of specs. It includes the latest NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4080 laptop edition with 12GB of DDR6. It also features an Intel i9-13950HX with a total of 24 cores. It has 32GB of DDR5. It features a 2TB NVMe M.2 Gen 4 SSD, and it also features a 17-inch QHD plus 240Hz screen to back that all up. Now, being an NVIDIA-based laptop, this machine does come with some pretty interesting features to get the most out of even the most ridiculous GPU, such as the 4080. This includes DLSS, which has a new release with the 40 series cards, DLSS 3. DLSS still uses AI to improve the frame rates during gameplay, but in the new 40 series cards, this is enabled by 4th gen tensor cores and optical flow accelerators. In real-world gameplay, it pulls out a solid 30% improvement over the previous versions of DLSS. The new IDA architecture released in the 40 series graphics cards redefines ray tracing by simulating how light behaves in the real world. Combine the new ray tracing with the DLSS experience and you have a playable ray tracing experience on this laptop. NVIDIA Reflex delivers low latency and response time by substantially improving performance throughput between the CPU and GPU. This has been further optimized with the 40 series cards. As I've already mentioned, the GE78 HX is a completely redesigned chassis when you compare it with other models. But that's not to say that MSI has completely redefined this laptop. It shares a lot of common features with other high-end laptops from MSI. This includes the metal around the top near the keyboard, the metal at the top to protect the screen, and a little bit of metal at the bottom to help with cooling performance. It also has a similar exhaust section at the rear, coming in at a modest 3 centimeters when you compare it to something like the GE67, which has a much larger exhaust section. It's also a pretty portable laptop in general, with a maximum thickness of about 3 centimeters and a weight of 3.1 kilos without the charging pack. The charging pack is pretty hefty, coming in at 1.4 kilograms, but it's pretty hard to get a 330 watt power brick any smaller than this. Overall, the look of the 78 is a bit old-fashioned to me. Don't get me wrong, they have tried to put some nice integrations with LEDs on this, including the LEDs at the rear with the MSI logo and the brand new light bar at the front, which is different from the solid light bar of the GE67. That being said, it feels like a step in a different direction for MSI. They were going for minimalistic, modern, sleek designs with their higher-end laptops, and this feels like a step back in time to the GE70 or GE72 days when they accentuated everything with cheap plastic parts, such as the red accents on this and the shiny accent at the bottom, which I cannot get my head around. Whether this is a successful throwback or just poor taste, I'll let you decide. MSI has put a decent amount of effort and thought into how they're going to cool such a powerful CPU-GPU combo. Interestingly, this has led them to a redesign or reforge of the piping system in this specific laptop. This includes a reforge of 6 pipes and 2 fans that are shared between the CPU and GPU. It has a total of 4 exhaust points, 2 at the rear and 2 on the sides, and it also has a massive intake on the bottom. Interestingly enough, during AEST stress tests, it didn't push as much air out the rear exhaust points as I would have expected and have seen from previous models from MSI. Despite this, the cooling performance was good, albeit a bit loud. Under gaming conditions, the palm rest was sitting around 30 degrees and near the exhaust was sitting at about 36 degrees. Under full load settings, the palm rest was about 32 degrees after 10 minutes of stress testing and 42.5 degrees towards the exhaust, while the fans were a crazy 58 dBA under max cooler boost mode. What surprised me was the fact the laptop sat at 53 dBA during gameplay. This is about 5 to 10 dBA louder than most models we've tested in the past, and really questions how long these fans are going to last this sort of pressure. On the left side, the GE78 features a USB Type-C port with a Thunderbolt 4 DP, SD express card reader, and a headphone jack. On the right side, it features just 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2A ports and a USB 3.2 Gen Type-C. On the rear, it features an Ethernet port, a HDMI 2.1 port, and a Type-C, and of course, the power port. Now on to the most important part of the review. How did the GE78 Raider stack up against other interesting laptops that we've had in the past? We've luckily had the GT77 in the studio, which featured an RTX 3080 Ti, and we also had the younger brother, the GE67 in the studio, which featured an RTX 3070 Ti. It will be very interesting to see how far the 40 series and 13th gen Intel CPUs have come when you compare it to the previous generation. First up, to the CPU tests. In R23, the 78 scored a total of 33,372 in the multi-core test. Compared to the GT77, this is a massive win for the new 13th gen, with the older 12th gen scoring 23,039 in that test. This is obviously bolstered by the fact the newer version has 32 threads and the older had 24 threads, but in the single core test, the 78 still pulled ahead with 2,069 on the single core compared to 1,804 for its predecessor, bolstered by that extra 0.5 GHz of boost clock speed. Now to the combined benchmarks, and in Firestrike, this machine was able to place a score of 32,980 in the normal version. This beat the GT77 by a decent margin, with it scoring 28,615, showing a 14% improvement. The most surprising upset for me was that the 78 was able to be put up against a water-cooled desktop version of the 3080 Ti and came out ahead in this test, with the desktop scoring 31,709. In Firestrike Ultra, the 78 scored 11,455 in 4K. This is compared to the GT77, which scored 9,318, showing a 20% gap at higher resolutions, falling behind the 12,786 on the desktop variant, possibly showing the weakness of the slowed down DDR6 compared to the X variant. To the DirectX 12 tests, in TimeSpy, the 78 pulled off a score of 18,247, while the GT77 scored 13,675. This marked the largest improvement over the previous generation, with a 29% bump in DirectX 12, and the 3080 Ti desktop scored 17,565. It is still ahead by a good margin over the desktop, and at least cements this machine as being as good as the desktop GPU, only a half generation behind. Now on to gameplay, and the GE78 is one of the first laptops I've felt comfortable leaving in all of its beautiful 2K resolution, so long as DLSS remained on. In Metro Exodus in Ultra settings, the laptop was able to produce a playable 110 to 120 FPS performance with only minor dips during action-packed sequences. This is compared to the myriad of other laptops such as the GE67, GT77, or even the GS77, having almost PowerPoint-like performance on this game with DLSS turned on. In Doom, the game was a pretty smooth 150 to 155 FPS experience with DLSS on, and 105 to 110 FPS with it off. Compare this back to the GE67 that averaged about 116 FPS in 2K settings, so it's a solid 30 to 40% better than the previous generation's younger brother. Onto ray tracing games, and in Forza 5 gameplay was around 95 to 100 FPS in 2K Ultra settings, with the previous version GE67 averaging about 77 FPS on these same settings. A marginally better performance, but I would have expected slightly better from the new GPU. In Counter-Strike, well, it is Counter-Strike, so we don't really play that game, but it might be a good thing to benchmark with Counter-Strike 2 coming out. Honestly, this laptop finally feels like a worthy iteration to push gaming laptops to the next generation. I've constantly criticized manufacturers like MSI for squeezing the last little bit out of the 30 series and Ti variants, but when they've got the chance to work with a new GPU chipset such as the 40 series, they have taken full advantage. With the redesigned chassis, you're able to get a solid TDP through the CPU and GPU, and this gives some stunning performance. They've also backed this up with a new cooling system that works adequately, albeit a bit loud, and pull this all together, it even competes with a 3080 Ti desktop version. So this is truly the next generation of gameplay and truly a 2K capable laptop. Sitting at about $6,000, it is a pretty expensive laptop, but when you compare it to something like the GT77, which got released about 6 months ago, that sat around anywhere between $7,000 and $8,000, so this isn't a terrible deal if you're looking for a new gaming laptop. I just wish the design wasn't stuck back in 2015. Thank you guys so much for checking out the most recent review from Epic PC on the GE78HX. If you did enjoy the content, feel free to subscribe, and as always, we're running a little bit of a giveaway today to thank you all for checking this review out. It includes an MSI H991 and a MSI goodie bag, so if you're interested in joining that, you can find links in the description on how to enter. It's completely free. And until next time, guys, I hope you have a great day.